My stepmom's ultimatum destroyed my dad and almost ruined my wedding. The email landed in my inbox like a ticking bomb. And with it, my carefully constructed world threatened to shatter. Just 3 months until my wedding to Richard. And the idyllic image I'd been clinging to was about to explode. My name is Lee. I'm 28. And this is the story of how my decision to have my mother walk me down the aisle unleashed a chain of events that nearly destroyed my family. Revealing a shocking confession that made me question everything I thought I knew about my dad. To grasp the sheer magnitude of this mess, we have to rewind to my childhood. My parents, Claire and Tom, were college sweethearts, the picture of young love. They married young, had me at 25, and for the first 10 years of my life, we were the all-American family. I have vivid memories of weekends at my grandparents' lake house, the laughter echoing during Friday night game nights, the warmth of my parents taking turns reading me bedtime stories. In those days, I felt safe, loved, secure. But that illusion was brutally shattered when I turned 10. Suddenly, Dad was working late more often, his brow perpetually furrowed with worrying. I started overhearing hushed, angry arguments between my parents. A name Tanya whispered like a curse. I was too young to fully understand, but the tension in the air was palpable. Then, one day, I came home from school to find Mom sobbing in the kitchen. She sat me down, her voice trembling, and explained the unthinkable. Dad was having an affair with his coworker, Tanya. They were getting a divorce. The following months were a blur of pain and confusion. Dad moved out, and I was consumed by a burning anger towards him for betraying Mom and tearing our family apart. The divorce was ugly, a bitter battle fought over custody and property. I remember sitting outside the courtroom during one particularly nasty hearing, my stomach churning with dread and fear. In the end, Mom was awarded primary custody. Initially, I refused to see Dad. I was too hurt, too angry, too afraid of abandoning Mom. But she, in her infinite wisdom, encouraged me to give him a chance. Your dad made a mistake, she'd say gently, but he still loves you. Slowly, grudgingly, I began to spend weekends with him. He'd take me to movies, try and fail miserably to teach me how to cook. But even as I started to enjoy those visits, things were about to get even more complicated. 2 years after the divorce, Dad announced he was marrying Tanya. She seemed nice enough, bringing me a small journal with my name embossed on the cover. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was the reason my family had imploded. She tried relentlessly to bond with me, showering me with gifts, books, art supplies, and suggesting mother-daughter activities like spa days and cooking classes. But her efforts felt forced, unnatural. I never felt comfortable around her. Part of it was loyalty to my mom. The other part was Tanya trying way too hard to replace her. As I stumbled through my teenage years, my relationship with Dad and Tanya grew increasingly strained. Tanya would often make snide remarks about Mom, whispering things like, "It's a shame your mother is so bitter," or, "If only your mom could move on like we have." She always tried to paint my mom in a bad light, which was extremely insensitive. Mom, on the other hand, never spoke ill of Dad or Tanya in front of me. She listened patiently to my complaints, always urging me to give them a chance. "They're not perfect, Lee," she'd say, "but it's okay to have different relationships with different people in your life." When I was 16, Dad and Tanya announced they were expecting. Dad was absolutely ecstatic, constantly gushing about how excited he was to finally have a real family. His happiness felt like a punch in the gut. It was as if I wasn't enough for him, as if I was just a leftover from his old life, not a valued part of his new one. Tragically, Tanya had a miscarriage at 20 weeks. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, sadness for their loss. Yes, but also a shameful sense of relief that I wouldn't be replaced by a new baby. Dad, consumed by grief, told me that Tanya would need extra love and support from me. It was an immense pressure to put on a teenager already struggling with the fallout from the divorce and the usual angst of adolescence. After the miscarriage, Tanya became even more clingy, introducing me to people as her daughter, a label that made me intensely uncomfortable. I refused to reciprocate, which led to countless arguments, with Dad always siding with Tanya, accusing me of being insensitive and not trying hard enough to ease her pain. During this time, Mom remained my rock, my unwavering support. She was always there to listen without judgment, encouraging me to pursue my interests, which led me to join the school newspaper and eventually study journalism in college. It was in college that I met Richard, a kindred spirit who shared my passion for investigative reporting. Richard's family background was refreshingly simple. His parents were happily married, and he had two younger siblings. At first, I hesitated to bring him into my tangled family drama, but his patience and understanding helped me open up. Which brings us to the present, 3 months before my wedding, and the decision that set off this whole mess. I chose my mom to walk me down the aisle. She's been my constant source of strength, my role model, my best friend. But when I told Dad and Tanya, all hell broke loose. Tanya burst into tears, and Dad exploded in anger. They accused me of being selfish, of dismissing Tanya's years of effort. They argued that Tanya deserved to have a special role in the wedding since she'd been in my life for so long. They conveniently forgot that my mom is my only mother, and the one I wanted by my side on my wedding day. The argument escalated into a shouting match. Dad threatened not to come if Tanya wasn't given a significant role. Tanya sobbed about how she'd always thought of me as her own daughter, dredging up the painful memory of her miscarriage as if it was emotional blackmail. I understand that the miscarriage was traumatic for her, but it felt incredibly unfair to use it as leverage against me. I'm standing firm in my decision, but now I'm plagued with doubt. Am I being too harsh? Richard supports me completely, insisting that it's our wedding and we should do what feels right to us. But some of my extended family members are urging me to compromise, to keep the peace. Part of me feels guilty, but another part is furious that Dad and Tanya are trying to make my wedding about them. I've spent years tiptoeing around their feelings, often at the expense of my own. I want my wedding day to be a celebration of love, not a battlefield for old family resentments. Update: a month has passed since my initial post. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude for all the supportive comments I received. They genuinely bolstered my confidence in my decision. Following the initial outburst, Dad and Tanya completely shut me out, refusing to communicate for weeks. I confess, I constantly found myself reaching for my phone, hoping for a sign, a message, anything from them. Richard was a steady presence during this agonizing period, consistently reminding me that it was okay to prioritize my emotional well-being and that I wasn't responsible for managing their emotions. Then, out of the blue, I received a text from Tanya. To my utter shock, she apologized for the years of pressure, admitting that she simply craved a closer connection with me. Her voice, conveyed through those digital characters, sounded genuinely remorseful. For a fleeting moment, I dared to entertain the possibility of reconciliation. She suggested we meet for coffee, to talk things over, and after some serious deliberation, I reluctantly agreed. We met at a local cafe, a place that held cherished memories of late-night study sessions with friends and early dates with Richard. It felt surreal, sitting across from Tanya in a space so deeply intertwined with happier times. Initially, the conversation flowed smoothly. She even stated that she respected my decision to have my mom walk me down the aisle. She then shared anecdotes about her own wedding to my dad, confessing her nervousness and longing for a more profound relationship with her stepmother. I felt myself softening, seeing her not as the woman who shattered my family, but as a person with her own insecurities and struggles. However, The atmosphere shifted dramatically when she started discussing plans for her and my dad's vow renewal next year. At first, I assumed she was simply sharing their future plans. But then, she dropped a bombshell. She proposed that I walk her down the aisle at their vow renewal ceremony, suggesting it as a means to balance things out. I was utterly speechless. The suggestion felt manipulative, as if she were attempting to create a quid pro quo situation, equating my wedding to their vow renewal. I vehemently argued that it wasn't the same thing at all, that a daughter's wedding is a unique and sacred event, incomparable to a vow renewal ceremony. Tanya became visibly agitated, accusing me of never truly giving her a chance. She then invoked the miscarriage, detailing its agonizing impact and reiterating her hopes that having a baby would have brought our families closer. I attempted to offer empathy, but I also asserted that her tragic loss, however painful, did not obligate me to see her as my mother. I explained that I, too, harbored complex emotions surrounding that period, acknowledging my sadness for their loss but admitting the simultaneous relief I felt at not being replaced. Tanya accused me of being cold-hearted and ungrateful for her efforts over the years, listing off every planned outing, every gift, every forced interaction, as if those actions alone constituted a genuine connection built on mutual respect. In the heat of the moment, I voiced something I had suppressed for years. I told Tanya that while I sympathized with her pain, I was tired of her using the miscarriage as emotional currency. I asserted that it wasn't fair to place the burden of her unfulfilled maternal desires on me, especially when I was just a teenager navigating my own family trauma. Tanya burst into tears and stormed out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, consumed by a volatile mix of guilt, anger, and relief at finally speaking my truth. I couldn't help but reflect on how this cafe, once a haven of happy memories, had been tainted by this painful confrontation. Later that evening, my dad called. Furious, he accused me of being cruel to Tanya, of being selfish and ungrateful, reiterating that Tanya had only ever wanted to love me. When I attempted to explain my perspective, he dismissed me, saying that if I couldn't accept Tanya as my mother after all these years, then he didn't know what to say. Despite our past issues, I had always believed in my dad's love for me. But in that moment, it felt like he was choosing Tanya over me, just as he had done years ago when he left our family for her. I'm heartbroken and enraged, but I'm also more resolute than ever in my decision. Richard has been my unwavering support throughout this ordeal, holding me when I cry and assuring me that I have every right to set boundaries. We're moving forward with our wedding plans, focusing on creating a day that celebrates our love and commitment. My mom has been amazing. As always, when I recounted the events of the coffee shop confrontation, she listened without judgment, reminding me that family relationships are complex and that it's okay to prioritize my own emotional well-being. After several days of reflection, I've decided to send my dad and Tanya a final message. In it, I plan to articulate my feelings and boundaries with absolute clarity. I want to make it clear that while I'm open to having a relationship with them, it must be on terms that respect my feelings and my relationship with my mom. I'll inform them that if they can't accept that, then they won't be welcome at the wedding. I can't help but feel a profound sense of both sadness and resolution. It's not the relationship I wished I could have with my dad and stepmother, but it's the healthiest one I can offer right now. Update 2, and things have taken another dramatic turn, becoming even more complicated. After I sent the message to my dad and Tanya, clearly outlining my feelings and boundaries, I was met with silence for a couple of weeks. The silence was both a source of relief, a momentary reprieve from the emotional turmoil, and a breeding ground for anxiety, the unspoken tension hanging heavy in the air. I tried to immerse myself in wedding preparations, focusing on the details, finalizing the menu with the caterer, enjoying dress fittings with my mom, pouring my heart into crafting our vows with Richard. However, the unresolved situation with my dad and Tanya lingered in the back of my mind, a persistent hum of unease. Then, last Saturday, my dad showed up at my apartment. Unannounced, I was in the midst of addressing invitations with Richard, enveloped in the mundane yet joyful task, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my dad standing there, looking haggard and defeated. I invited him in, more out of stunned surprise than anything else. Richard, sensing the gravity of the situation, excused himself to give us some privacy, but not before squeezing my hand in a silent gesture of support. As soon as we were alone, Dad broke down, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. He confessed that, in the wake of the coffee shop confrontation and my subsequent message, Tanya had reached her breaking point. She told my dad that she couldn't endure the constant rejection any longer, that she needed to find herself, to escape the suffocating weight of our strained relationship. She packed her bags and left to stay with her sister in another state. As I listened to my dad pour out his heart, I was consumed by a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of me felt a sense of vindication, a grim satisfaction that I had been right all along. Tanya's attachment to me was unhealthy, driven by her own needs rather than genuine affection. But another part of me was racked with guilt. Had my refusal to accept her as a mother figure really caused this much pain, this much destruction? Dad was a mess, his emotions swinging wildly between apologizing to me for his past actions and blaming me for Tanya's departure. He admitted that he didn't know how to fix things, that he felt lost and adrift. He then pleaded with me, asking if I would consider attending family therapy with him and Tanya, a suggestion that made my stomach churn with apprehension. I told him I wasn't ready for that the idea of facing Tanya, of dredging up the past in a sterile therapy setting, felt overwhelming, especially since she had just left him and I wasn't even sure where we all stood. Then, my dad dropped another bombshell, a revelation that shook me to my core. He confessed that years ago, when Tanya had her miscarriage, they had consciously decided not to try for another baby, believing that if they couldn't have a child of their own, perhaps fostering a stronger relationship with me would fill that void. He admitted that they had been wrong to try to force a connection, to try to replace the maternal bond that should have developed organically. I was stunned by this revelation. It explained so much about their behavior over the years, the increased pressure to bond with Tanya, the constant comparisons to a real family, the guilt tripping after the miscarriage. But it also filled me with a searing anger. I felt like I had been manipulated, that my feelings had been disregarded in their desperate quest to create their ideal family. I told my dad I needed time to process everything, to let the weight of his confession sink in, and asked him to leave. As I closed the door behind him, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. I immediately called my mom, needing her calm presence and wise counsel. She listened patiently as I recounted everything, then suggested that I take some time to really think about what I want my relationship with my dad and Tanya to look like moving forward. Now, I'm feeling incredibly conflicted, torn between a desire for healing and a need for self-preservation. On one hand, I feel vindicated in my decision to maintain clear boundaries with Tanya, as her leaving my dad seems to confirm that her attachment to me was rooted more in her own needs than in genuine care. On the other hand, I feel a pang of sympathy for my dad, who seems genuinely remorseful and utterly lost. Perhaps, in time, I could be open to rebuilding a relationship with my dad, but the thought of ever having Tanya back in my life, of reliving the years of manipulation and emotional pressure, fills me with dread. My mom, when I told her what happened, was surprisingly sympathetic toward my dad. She said that people can make big mistakes when they're desperate for love and acceptance. She reminded me of how young my dad was when they had me, and how he might have been trying to recreate the family life he felt he had lost. The wedding is now just a month away, and I'm wrestling with another difficult decision: what to do about my dad's invitation. Should I still invite him, giving him a chance to be a part of this important day? Despite the mess he has created, should I try to reach out to Tanya, now that I have a better understanding of her motivations, and attempt some form of closure? Or should I focus on my own happiness, on the celebration of my love for Richard, and let them sort out their own issues? As I sit here staring at the stack of unsent invitations, I realize that this decision is about more than just the wedding. It's about defining the kind of relationship I want with my dad moving forward. About navigating the treacherous waters of compassion and self-protection. About finding a path towards healing in a situation where the wounds run so deep. Update 3. The wedding has finally taken place last weekend, and I felt that I should give you all a final update on how everything turned out. After much consideration and many deep conversations with Richard and my mom, I decided to keep my dad's invitation to the wedding open. However, I did make it explicitly clear that the invitation was just for him, and it did not include Tanya. I went on to write him a long email in which I explained my decision. In this email, I told him that while I was willing to work on rebuilding our relationship, it would take time, and that I needed him to respect my boundaries. I also stated that if he couldn't be there for me and fully celebrate this important day in my life, I would fully understand if he couldn't attend without Tanya. To my utter surprise, my dad accepted these terms. He replied to my email, once again apologizing for his past actions and stating that he wanted to be there for me on my wedding day no matter what. He also mentioned that he and Tanya were still separated, and that he was beginning to realize how much their relationship had negatively affected me over the years. The week leading up to the wedding was a frantic blur of last-minute preparations, errands, and details. My mom was a constant source of support, assisting with everything from finalizing the flower arrangements to calming my pre-wedding jitters. Seeing how easily she and Richard got along made me feel incredibly grateful for the loving, drama-free family I was marrying into. On the wedding day itself, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. As my mom helped me into my dress, we both teared up a bit. She told me how incredibly proud she was of the woman I had become, a moment that I'll cherish forever. The ceremony was so beautiful. It seemed absolutely perfect. Walking down the aisle with my mom by my side, I saw my dad sitting in the front row, looking emotional but managing to give me a small smile when our eyes met. Seeing Richard's face when I made my way down the aisle was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. During the reception, I was so busy greeting guests and enjoying the celebration with Richard, but I did notice my dad looking a bit sad and lonely. However, he put on a brave face whenever he caught me looking, much to my surprise. He even had a civil conversation with my mom at one point, and just seeing them able to be in the same room without any tension was a huge relief. After the wedding, my dad and I had a very long talk. He apologized again for everything, and he said that he wanted to try his hardest to be a better father. He admitted that he had made a lot of mistakes, particularly in trying to force a relationship between Tanya and me. He also told me that Tanya had made the decision to stay with her sister indefinitely, and that they were considering a trial separation. I'm now cautiously optimistic about working towards rebuilding my relationship with my dad. We've agreed to start with monthly dinners, just the two of us, to reconnect without any pressure or expectations. As for Tanya, I decided not to reach out to her for the time being. I think we both need a lot of time and space to heal and to process everything that has happened. Maybe someday we'll be able to have a conversation about it all. But, for now, I'm just focusing on my new life with Richard and on working on my relationship with my dad. This whole experience has been an absolute roller coaster, but I am glad that I stood my ground and remained true to myself. I'm entering my married life with a much clearer understanding of my family dynamics and with far stronger boundaries. In the end, the wedding turned out to be not just a celebration of my love for Richard but also a new beginning for my relationship with my parents. Richard and I are now settling into married life and are very much looking forward to facing our future together, knowing that we can handle whatever comes our way. We're planning a belated honeymoon for the coming month, a trip to Japan that we are both really excited about. I would like to offer my sincere thanks to everyone who supported me throughout this difficult journey. Your advice and encouragement truly helped me to navigate this difficult situation and begin this new chapter of my life on such a positive note. So, Reddit, after hearing all of this, I have to ask, do you think I did the right thing? Was I too harsh on Tanya? Or did I have every right to protect myself and my own feelings? Was inviting my dad the correct decision? Or would it have been better to focus solely on my own happiness? I'm honestly curious to hear your perspective on everything, and I'd greatly appreciate any insight or advice you might have.